One of the most common ways to implement validation in data binding in WPF and other technologies is iDataErrorInfo. Partly because this has been around for a long time, since .NET 1.0, it was supported in Windows Forms and WPF and carries forward to other XAML technologies as well. Basically, iDataErrorInfo is an interface that defines an API so that the binding can query for errors on the object that it's bound to. It's got two properties on it. The first is an error property, and that's a string property that's meant to be an error for the object as a whole. That one's not used a whole lot. It can be used in a data grid scenario to provide a row level indication, but when you have individual input fields, it's not really used at all. The main one that's focused on is the indexer. So this is a C# indexer, or an item property in Visual Basic, that is passed an argument that is the property name, and is expected to return a string error if there is a validation error for that property. So as I said, it's been around for a long time. It was actually implemented in dataset row objects in .NET 1.0 and carrying forward, and it's very flexible and easy to use. One potential downside to it, depending on your perspective, is that you do have to allow the property to first be set. So the order of operations here is that the binding is going to go to set a property because some input has been put into a field in the UI. It has to first set that property, and then it will come back and query the iDataErrorInfo interface to basically say, are you happy with that value? So you have to have stored that value in the member variable so that that subsequent call through iDataErrorInfo can look at the value that was set and decide whether it's an appropriate value. Once you have iDataErrorInfo implemented on your data object that you're going to bind to, you have to turn it on the binding. So there's a property on the binding, validates on data errors that you set to true, and that causes the binding to go do that process I talked about, where it queries the iDataErrorInfo to see if there's an error associated with the property after it sets it. So let's take a look at a demo of how we implement this on an object and get it hooked up and using it in a binding.